Hi Autophiles, Subhash here with the Renault Zoe. So this is the second gen Zoe. This car was launched, it could have been last year, maybe this year. Regardless, the fact is it was forgotten. Every single person who has been monitoring the EV space has kind of forgotten this car. And to me, it was a little bit interesting and I really wanted to test drive it. I asked Renault for it and they said they didn't have a test car on fleet. So they had to go through their whole GoCar app and look for one, and they had one on car rental. So yeah, they gave me a promo code to check it out. It's actually not bad, you know. This is the R135, the higher variant. It has 135 horsepower, it has about 245 Newton meters of torque. It's actually more than enough power, and in eco mode it limits you to about 105 kilometers per hour, which is actually all you need in the city. If you step on it or if you turn off eco mode, it'll actually give you a lot more. There are other positive things about this car, like the fact that the AC charging is 22 kilowatt, which you don't really get at all from the mass market manufacturers. I think only Smart gives you 22 kilowatts. The rest are all 7 kilowatt or 11 kilowatt at best. To give you some context, that means that if you go home and charge with the right charger, 3 hours from 0 to 100%. Whereas with the BYD or with most of the other ones, it's maybe 7 hours, 5, 7, sometimes even 12 hours to get to 100%. If you have a slower 7 kilowatt or 6.6 kilowatt AC charger. So yes, 3 hours to 100 in your own house is pretty rare and something they can flex about. The problem is the DC charging is only 50 kilowatt in an era where a lot of them are starting to go up to 100, sometimes even touching 200 kilowatt DC charging. So this takes like an hour plus to get to 80%. The other key spec is 386 kilometers of range. But the funny thing is, when I picked it up, it was at 93%, I think, and it quoted me 200 kilometers of range. But I just babied it back home and I drove it a little bit, you know. I drove it from PJ to Bukit Jalil, and then Bukit Jalil to Taman OUG, and then Taman OUG to Bangsa, and then Bangsa to Lucky Garden back home, and yeah, Bukit Jalil again to Bukit Raja, and then Bukit Raja finally to Klang. So, and then Klang back home. So I drove it quite a lot, and today I drove it to KL for another event, and then now I'm back here in PJ. After all that driving, I still got about 100 kilometers of range left. The key thing is this heat. When you're out here in the sun, you can see the percentage points dropping. Batteries don't like heat. Whereas if I'm driving around at night, it just stays, you know. It'll when I start the journey, it's like, let's say 150 kilometers. When I end the journey, it'll be like 145, even though I've driven like clearly like 30 kilometers. So heat is a key issue for this car. But that's not the real problem with this car. So the key issue with this car is the pricing and what you're getting for it. This is 180,000 ringgit. That's the same price as a mid-spec BYD Seal, which gives you a lot more range and I think a lot more equipment. But most important of all, it gives you a sense of ambition. If you spend any amount of time with this car, it's not really the speed or the range or any of that is the problem. The problem is that it lacks any sense of ambition. I saw a lot of comments about the Ion Y being badly built or having poor quality and it should be sold at 70,000. I don't think so. I mean, yeah, maybe it should be sold cheaper, but at 120,000, you're getting a sense of ambition in that car. You get that panoramic sunroof, you get a lot of digital elements that are quite well done, and build quality and colors on the interior that are aspirational, something that is not premium but is trying to be. They understand that they don't have the brand presence, they don't have that cool factor yet, but they're really trying hard. With the Renault Zoe, I think it's the opposite problem. They know they've got the brand on their side because they're Renault, they're old brand, legacy brand. They've been doing cars for, I don't know, 100 years now. They've got the design. This is one of the best, most proportionate looking city car designs. There's nothing about the shape that looks wrong, you know. They've got the shape right, they've got the cool factor, I guess, down somewhat. The issue is that there's no sense of ambition in this car. So you go inside and you feel, oh, that is not a nice sound. That's the sound of a rental car, to be honest. I mean, it's the sound of a cheap European city car, and not all European cars are premium. Inside here, bare plastic, no auto up-down for anyone except for the driver. So it's really the Perdua Myvi of the electric car world. You've got that long bee-sting antenna, which is like the longest bee-sting antenna I've ever seen in my life. So this opens up another conversation of whether Perdua should even bother making an EV. Because if Perdua makes an EV and it comes in at 100,000 but feels like this, what is the point? Because I can tell you for a fact that the BYD Dolphin doesn't feel like a Peridua. It doesn't have so many cheap plastics, so many unpadded fabric surfaces. Yeah, there's just no sense of ambition in this car. Yeah, there's some fancy design elements like digital display here and yes, wireless Apple CarPlay, but 7-inch screen that looks like it's from 2015. Not exactly screaming upmarket, are we? So I'm not trying to bash the car or anything like that. I think even Renault themselves are quite realistic about the goals they set for this car. But I want to give this car a reason for existence, because I think every car needs to have a reason for existence. And I think this car's reason for existence, there are two. The first one is that it gives you real context as to what legacy car players can do when they are forced to make EVs with a very tight budget. Volvo has shown us, Mercedes-Benz has shown us, Audi has shown us, Porsche has shown us. So we've seen what all these players can do. The ones that haven't shown any success are the real legacy players like Renault, Peugeot, Volkswagen. I mean, these brands, except for Renault, no one else brings in their electric vehicles, right? They sell them in Europe in small numbers, but they don't bring them here, except for this. So the point is that I think the reason of this car existing is, if this car did not exist, Malaysians would not have that context in mind. This shows you how much value for money a BYD Seal or a Tesla Model 3 is. This shows you that if there were no disruptive players in the market, the legacy players would just give you this. They would be happy to sell you cars like this at 180,000 ringgit for the rest of time. And this is 180,000 ringgit without excise duties. It shows you what the industry would have given us if there were no disruptors in the market. This is what this car is for. I know that's pretty negative, but I really think that's a good enough reason for it to exist. Otherwise, there's no reason for it to exist. It doesn't even factor into your consciousness. At least now you have some reason to think about it, right? But the second reason, the good reason I think that this car exists is that my experience with the GoCar app was pretty good. If I was seriously considering buying an EV with no context as to how difficult it is to use as a daily driver, I would go on GoCar and I would actually book an EV for a week, which they have some promo packages for. You can book it for 3 days or 7 days. I haven't seen the pricing for the Renault Zoe, but I've seen the Ion Y Plus, which we have reviewed very recently. Yeah, you can book that for I think 400 ringgit for 3 days or 800 ringgit for a week. And then you just take it on a busy week, a week that you know that you've got to do a lot of family stuff. And then you see how that EV lifestyle gels with you. So 800 ringgit might sound like a lot of money, but if you think about it like this, if you don't do this 800 ringgit 1 week trial thing, you're going to end up spending 200,000 ringgit on the car, plus your interest, your loan. You'll be stuck for 7 to 9 years, and then you possibly have depreciation to worry about. If you want to sell the car, the resale value might not be what you expect. You have all these things to worry about, and this is before you even consider whether the EV lifestyle is for you. So you spend this 800 bucks, you decide if the EV excitement is worth it for you, if the excise duty savings is worth it for you, if the joy of sustainability is worth it for you. Take the 1 week with GoCar, take one of these cars, try it for a week, decide if it's worth it. That is the second reason for this car's existence, because it can be used as a relatively cheap short-term lease EV to give people this experience of EV use in their daily drive. So I'm going to end it with just a quick tour of the things I liked in this Renault Zoe, the charming stuff lah, let's put it that way. So one of the things I liked was that even though the screen is tiny, it's like 7 inches, you have wireless Apple CarPlay, which is not even available on that Ion Y Plus. You need a wired connection for that. So yeah, I liked that. That was pretty good. I also like all the physical buttons. You got your buttons for eco, for door locks, and I found myself clicking these buttons a lot because yeah, door lock, you got to do that, otherwise the Indians will rob you, right? Eco, because this gives you a hard speed limit to limit your drainage of the battery. I like that you still have a start-stop button. I don't like that there's no wireless charger and that this space here is a little bit too small to put the smartphone, so I found myself putting my phone at a weird angle. Even down here it's too small, so no real space to like store your smartphone. That's one complaint, I guess. Besides that, a little bit of a funky design element, which this one didn't add any value to my drive. Seats are like tall and weirdly ergonomic, even though it's quite small. Don't look at that, that's not sponsored. Yeah, you got semi-leather seats. It's okay lah, you don't feel so cheap in there, but definitely this is closer to a Myvi than a Mercedes-Benz. Whereas a BYD Seal is slightly closer to a Mercedes-Benz than it is to a Myvi. And yet these are the same price. Cannot believe it. And besides that, I think the last thing that I found a bit charming is the size. You know, my wife sat in this and she was like, you know what, I could live with this, I could drive this every day. Then I told her the price and she was like, no way. But yeah, there's the size. It's just super small, you know. You can see every corner of this. You don't really have a 360-degree camera, but you don't need it. You just get that, whatever the heck that is. But yeah, it's okay lah. It's okay. It's a tolerable drive. It's just for this price, it's not worth it. If this car was maybe 80,000, you can kind of stomach it. But of course the government won't let you, and I don't think they can sell it for a profit at 80,000. The boot was quite okay size, but the back seats are really, really tight. No getting around that. And finally, there's the way it drives. So the first thing is, like I mentioned, the size is really small, so it's very maneuverable. I mean, the notoriously difficult to navigate PJ Newtown multi-level car park. And I got here just fine, you know. I've taken so many cars where I had to like really creep up the ramps. But this car just whoop, 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 all the way up. The second thing that's really nice about the drive is that it actually handles itself pretty well. It's not the most comfortable thing in the world, but it gives you this confidence to chuck it around the corner. The suspension is good. You never feel like you're out of control with this car. In stark contrast to a lot of Chinese cars where you take a corner and you don't know what's happening with the wheels. That's not the case with this. So that's it for my coverage of the Renault Zoe. Just something I was curious about, and I hope it's not too harsh. I do want to see the legacy players find a way forward in this EV landscape. It'd be such a shame if they can't navigate it properly. And I've seen Renault do some really interesting things coming on the horizon, like the Renault 5, reviving some of their historical vehicles in EV form. I hope it does okay. I hope they get the pricing right. But yes, things will definitely change, and this is the reality for EVs. The older players are stuck a few rungs behind. I'm Subhash. This was Autophiles. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.